She was an orphan from a young age. No parents, no family but her cousin Mordecai, who raised her like his own child. Life hadn't been easy, but somehow, through all its twists and turns, this young Jewish woman ended up changing the fate of an entire nation. Her name was Esther. At first, she was just an ordinary girl living in the city. But she was beautiful, graceful, striking, the kind of beauty that couldn't be ignored, especially in a world where appearance could determine your future. When King Xerxes, also called Ahasuerus, got rid of his queen, Vashti, he ordered a search for a new queen. Beautiful women from all over the kingdom were brought to the palace, and Esther was one of them. That was the first turning point in her life. She left her familiar neighborhood, left Mordecai's humble and loving home, and was taken to the king's palace. There, she learned to keep quiet and wait. She didn't tell anyone she was Jewish. She simply stayed under the radar, like a lily that hadn't bloomed yet. Eventually, she caught the king's eye. He was so taken by her that he made her his new queen. Just like that, Esther wasn't just a name anymore. She became Queen Esther of Persia. But her real test hadn't even begun. The king's top official, Haman, was a ruthless and power-hungry man. When Mordecai refused to bow to him, Haman took it personally. Furious, he convinced the king to issue a law to wipe out all Jews in the kingdom. The fate of an entire people now hung by a thread, and the only person who might be able to stop it was Esther. Mordecai sent word to her, begging her to go to the king and plead for their people. But in Persia, showing up before the king without being summoned was a death sentence, even for the queen. Late at night, the palace in Susa was quiet. Esther stood behind a curtain, praying, her heart pounding. Then she put on her royal robes and walked toward the king's throne. Every step echoed through the silent halls. She didn't know what would happen. Would he extend the golden scepter and spare her life? Or would he order her death? The king looked up and saw her. Slowly, he reached out his golden scepter. That simple gesture saved her life. Esther stepped forward, touched the tip of the scepter, and quietly thanked him. Xerxes, with all his power and unimaginable wealth, looked at her with real tenderness. The Bible says in Esther 5 verse 3, "What is it, Queen Esther? What do you want? Even if it's half my kingdom, I'll give it to you." She was alive, but the mission had just begun. Esther knew she had to expose Haman and save her people. But how could she do it? How could she get the king, who trusted Haman, to see what kind of man he really was? She chose her moment wisely. She didn't blurt it all out in front of the king and his advisors. That could have embarrassed him and given Haman a chance to talk his way out. Maybe, growing up with Mordecai, she'd learned the wisdom of timing. Like King Solomon once said, "There's a time to be silent and a time to speak." Esther gently said, "If it pleases the king, would you and Haman join me for a banquet I've prepared?" The king agreed and called for Haman. Esther was smart. She respected her husband's authority and created the perfect setting for a deeper conversation. That night, she served his favorite foods, poured the finest wine, and played music he loved. She watched his face carefully. He was enjoying himself, and again asked what she wanted. But Esther didn't speak up yet. Instead, she invited them both to a second banquet the next day. Why wait another day when the lives of her people were on the line? Because timing mattered. Esther knew she needed the right moment, one where the king would really listen. Patience takes strength. Though her heart was heavy and her mind full, she waited. Proverbs 25 verse 15 says, "Through patience a ruler can be persuaded, and a gentle tongue can break a bone." Esther waited for the right moment, spoke with care, and that made all the difference. Meanwhile, Haman left the palace feeling proud and smug. He thought he was special. After all, he'd been invited to dinner with the king and queen. But when he saw Mordecai still refusing to bow to him, he was furious. Mordecai wasn't trying to disrespect him. He just wouldn't betray his faith in God. Still, Haman couldn't handle it. He rushed home, told his wife and friends, and they came up with a plan. Build a massive 72-foot tall pole and ask the king to hang Mordecai on it. Haman thought it was a great idea. That night, something strange happened. The king couldn't sleep. So he asked for the royal records to be read aloud, maybe to help him doze off. But in those records, he was reminded of a plot to assassinate him, one that Mordecai had uncovered. The would-be killers had been dealt with. But what about Mordecai? Had he ever been rewarded? No, the servants replied. The king was troubled. He wanted to make it right. Early the next morning, Haman rushed in to ask for permission to kill Mordecai. But before he could speak, the king asked, "What should be done for the man the king wants to honor?" Haman, full of himself, thought the king meant him. So he went all out, royal robes, a crown, a parade through the city. The king said, "Great idea. Go do all of that, for Mordecai." Haman must have been livid, but he had no choice. He had to honor the very man he hated most. Talk about humiliation. If Esther hadn't waited for that second banquet, if she had rushed her request, none of this would have happened. Haman would still look like a hero. The king wouldn't have remembered Mordecai. Maybe God had a hand in that sleepless night. The next night, the second banquet began. Again, the king asked Esther what she wanted. This time, she stood up, eyes filled with emotion. "If I've found favor with you, your majesty," she said, "please spare my life, and the lives of my people." She didn't demand. She didn't accuse. She simply and bravely made her request with respect. The king was stunned. Who would dare do such a thing? She turned slowly and pointed. This wicked man, Haman. The room froze. Esther explained, if she and her people were just being enslaved, maybe she'd stay silent. But they were facing extermination, and the king himself would suffer the loss. Haman was stunned. The king was furious. He stormed out to the garden to cool off. While the king was outside, Haman fell at Esther's feet, begging for his life. When the king came back in and saw Haman close to the queen, he exploded. "Will he even assault the queen in my own house?" That was the end of Haman. Guards covered his face and dragged him away. One of the king's servants mentioned the pole Haman had built for Mordecai. The king gave a cold command, "Hang Haman on it." Just like that, the tables turned. Justice showed up in the final hour. Not because Esther had power, but because she had faith, wisdom, and courage. She waited when it was time to wait, and she spoke up when it was time to act. Because of her, a nation was saved. Years later, the Jewish people created a holiday to remember that day. It's called Purim. In this world, darkness doesn't always lose right away. Sometimes evil seems to win while justice stays quiet. Have you ever felt that way? Esther didn't let darkness break her. She never gave up on God. She waited in silence when she needed to, but when the moment came, she spoke up, bravely and wisely, and left the outcome in God's hands. We can do the same. The God who helped Esther is the same today. And He's more than able to make the proud fall into the very trap they set for others.